So hopefully everyone can see that. In terms of the agenda of what we'll be covering today, we're going into a little bit of detail about what the page experience update is, and leading into covering each of the core web vitals. We'll then be looking at when this is actually rolling out and how we can optimize for the three main metrics that make up the core web vitals, as well as covering some tools that will help us to measure those. So first of all, as I said, page experience update. It's essentially covering these three main areas. The first one is load speed, and that's because Google has been saying for quite a few years now how a slow performance of a website affects user experience, but also has quite a substantial impact on revenue. Mobile friendliness is also a big part of this, and how your website is able to adapt to different screen sizes. And as I say, there's three main metrics that make up the core web vitals. So this is an image that Google shared probably about a year ago now, when they first started to seriously talk about the core web vitals. And you can see that it's not just these three metrics that make it up. We've got mobile friendliness, as I said, but also the use of safe browsing and HTTPS for mobile security. But intrusive interstitials can have a big impact as well. And this is things like pop-ups. It can even be like cookie warnings, chat bots as well. I've seen that today with another website that was having quite a negative impact on a mobile site. And that was because on a mobile device, when the chatbot automatically opened, there was no functionality to actually close down that chatbot. So you couldn't even get to the website. So that was obviously causing quite a large problem. And then the core web vitals themselves, they're covering these three main areas. So the first is loading, the second is interactivity, and finally visual stability. And we'll go into a little bit more detail about the three of those in the coming slides. In terms of why this is being introduced, it's because, according to Google, great page experiences enable people to get more done and engage more deeply with websites, and conversely, because a bad page experience stands in the way of people being able to find that information and being able to do what it is that you want your customers to do on a website. So the core web vitals themselves, again, this is another image from Google that explains how they work. So the three of them have gradings from good, needs improvement, and poor, and they each have a score or a timing measurement that allows them to fall within those three areas. The first two are measured in seconds and milliseconds, and the third one has an actual score that's based on how much it moves and how much that's impacting performance. So the cumulative layout shift isn't a time measurement, that's more of an actual score. So largest contentful paint. So this one is looking at basically, didn't mean to press next, but there we go. Is basically looking at when the main content on the page actually starts to load. It's the same for your website, but this actual image that I've included here is from a Google search result. So if you're searching for Larry Page, who's one of the co-founders of Google, the largest contentful paint on this one is actually shown on the second image. So that's when the main area of text is actually visible on the screen. In most cases, it'll be an image, depending on what your website is, but as is the case on this website, the largest piece of content can also be a piece of text as well. So that's what this is looking at, is when the largest element of the page starts to appear, as opposed to the first contentful paint, which is when the first element starts to appear on the page. This metric is important for a number of reasons, and that's because it tells the user that the URL is actually loading. Otherwise, you just could be looking at a blank screen and waiting for things to happen. It's also important because it's a measurement of the page is actually usable. Because of that, it's something that can quite easily be optimized, measured, and improved. There's a few different ways as well that you can actually see quick wins within this. The first is images and making sure that they're actually being loaded in the correct size instead of being resized within HTML and CSS. I've seen some quite big differences with client websites just by making sure that images are being resized appropriately. So the second metric that we're looking at is first input delay. So this one is looking at interactivity. So we can see from the image here that anything that's less than 100 milliseconds is a good score, and anything that's greater than 300 milliseconds is classed as poor. What this metric means is that it's actually measuring the responsiveness of your website. And the image in the middle there will be similar to what you'll see on various site speed tools, such as Lighthouse. You can see the waterfall section, and it'll display things that look like this. What it's actually looking at, though, is how quick your website responds to a user taking an action. So that can be clicking play on a button, it can be clicking next on a slider, or things like that. So it's how soon your website responds to that. It is for that reason that it's really important that you make sure that your resources that are on your website don't make the experience slow and cumbersome. You know, if that is the case, people will quite likely leave and go somewhere else if, you know, things just aren't working as the user might expect. In terms of what can cause problems with the first input delay, it's often large images or scripts that are loaded in a disorderly manner. And with going back to the previous example with what we said about the waterfall, if you picture that as being like a traffic jam, things are starting to load but not able to finish, and it's just causing a backup of all of the resource there as they're trying to load. Again, yeah, with the first input delay, we can see how clunky users perceive the website to be while it's loading. And the important thing to realize with this metric is that it's going off actual user interactions. And because of that, the results can vary from person to person and location to location. For example, if I'm looking at a website here on my Wi-Fi connection, which is, you know, has quite a good connection, therefore it's quite fast, that might be different to somebody else who's looking at the website on a 3 or 4G connection in the park. Things are going to respond differently based on the connection that they're using. The final one is cumulative layout shift. And in my opinion, and from what I've seen from some others, this one has the potential to have the largest impact. Basically because it's the most frustrating for users. So this one is measuring visual stability. And as I say before, this one's measured on a scoring system. So anything that's less than 0.1 is considered good, and anything greater than 0.25 is considered poor. So this is looking at the amount of unexpected shift on a page. Now, if you've ever been on a website, like news websites are quite guilty for this, where you're reading an article and then an advert on the page will start to load and the text moves and you lose where you are on the page. That's an example of cumulative layout shift, and nobody enjoys that. It definitely provides a poor experience, and it's something that Google is actively trying to cut down on. It doesn't just happen from ads though, it can happen due to the way that things are loaded. I even had it today where there was a client website who has a little language selector in the corner, and you wouldn't expect that to move very much, but it actually does. It shifted like twice around the page in quite a large amount, as well as other elements on the page, but that was causing quite a large issue. So as I say, it's not just images it's not just ads that have the potential to cause this frustrating experience. The cumulative layout shift is really important because we've seen previously, and Google has talked about how the conversion rate drops as the CLS increases. So the conversion rate drops as the amount of movement on the page increases. And there also seems to be quite a correlation between that shift on the page and people leaving to go elsewhere. So when is all of this happening? This is the page experience update that Google has been talking about for probably the past 18 months to 2 years now. Basically, it's happening now. So it was originally planned to roll out in 2020, but this was delayed due to the pandemic. And at the time, Google said it would start to roll out in May 2021. However, when that came around, Google Google decided that they weren't quite ready for it yet, and they still wanted to make some tweaks to the algorithm on their end, and announced that they were pushing it back until June. And then on the 15th of June this year, Google stated on their Google Search Central Twitter account that it was happening, and that is now expected to roll out by the end of August 2021. It won't really be until then until we're fully able to see what the impact of all of this is, if any. And that's the tweet from Google talking about, that's the tweet from Google announcing that the update was now rolling out. So given all of that, how can we optimize for those? Well, there's a few different ways. So with the largest contentful paint, one of the ways that we can deal with that is by handling render blocking scripts and style sheets in a more effective manner, and trying to minimize the amount of CSS that's being used inside the head. Reducing your server response time can have quite a big impact, and ensuring that your time to first byte is as slow as possible, is as quick as possible, should I say, will produce quite substantial results there. With the first input delay, which is looking at the interactivity, we need to look at ensuring that the CSS code is downloaded and parsed as quickly as possible, and breaking up any long JavaScript tasks. Lazy loading is another way that we can deal with that, as well as looking at how we can reduce any third-party scripts. If they're no longer used on the website, we can simply get rid of them, or we can look at other ways to reduce their overall size. With the cumulative layout shift, carousels can cause quite a number of issues, and there's been talk in SEO and various corners of Twitter for a few years that nobody really likes carousels anyway. You know, does anybody actually sit there and scroll through them? Probably not. Compressing the images before they're uploaded as well, similar to what we were saying earlier, is a good way to help to reduce the amount of shift that you're seeing on the page. And also looking at using the aspect ratio CSS attribute. When we're measuring this, there's two types of scoring tools that you'll see on the likes of Lighthouse and PageSpeed Insights. And the first is field tools, which are actual measurements of the site. And the second is lab tools. And this is a virtual score based on simulated conditions that a user on a mobile phone may encounter. And that second one is important because that does have an effect on the first input delay. So for measuring the largest contentful paint, you can see there's various tools that you can use, PageSpeed Insights being one of them that we can use to measure and look at the field data. Same with the Core Web Vitals report in Search Console and the Chrome User Experience report. If you want to look at the simulated data for largest contentful paint, again, you can see that in Chrome DevTools, Lighthouse, and Web Page Test is also a really useful tool. First input delay, as I say, because of the user element, that this can only be measured after a user has taken an action on the website. That means that this isn't something that can be measured in the lab. We can only use field data for this one. And as such, the best ways to measure your website against this is to use things like the Chrome User Experience report, PageSpeed Insights, the speed report within Search Console as well. And there's also a Web Vitals JavaScript library, which is quite useful. And then finally, with the cumulative layout shift, for measuring that one with field tools, again, you can have the Chrome User Experience report, PageSpeed Insights, Search Console, and the JavaScript library. And then again, for looking at simulated data, you can again use Chrome DevTools, Lighthouse, and the Web Page Test. And that's me.